Hello, I'm Dr. Richard Abels, Professor Emeritus from the United States Naval Academy. And what I'd like to talk to you about today is the reign of Æthelred II, known as Æthelred the Unready, and the second round of Viking Wars, the Viking Wars which resulted in the Danish conquest of England. The other measures he took were pretty impressive, actually. And it goes ahead and it makes us have to rethink the Æthelred the Unready nickname. One of the very first things he did was when a second raid, large raid occurred, again with Olaf Tryggvason at the head of it in 994. Again, peace was purchased, but this time what Æthelred did was he sent a message to Olaf, and in this particular raid probably did include Sweyn Forkbeard, and what he did was he made a separate peace with Olaf Tryggvason and Olaf's forces. He paid them a huge amount of money, I think about 24,000 pounds it says, in addition to the money that was promised to the entire fleet. He paid him the money, and in return, what Olaf did was he agreed to be Æthelred's ally. They had a formal peace, and the treaty is preserved in a law code called Æthelred II, Æthelred's second law code. It was 22,000 pounds, plus gifts of friendship and provisions for all of his men. What Olaf agreed to do was aid Æthelred against its enemies, and that, according to the treaty, that if enemies' raids came to England and Æthelred was asked to help, he would come back with a fleet to help. The whole idea was that Olaf would leave England. He would go away, but he would come back if needed. And Olaf did. Olaf left, now really rich and able to purchase a lot of loyal followers. He left and went back to Norway, where he proceeded to become king of Norway, which meant that Sweyn had to return to Denmark to deal with the problem of Olaf Tryggvason, his former partner.
Right.
It was an extremely effective way of doing things. Not all of Olaf's men left. What Æthelred did was he took into his own service some of the captains of these fleets. One of them we know from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle was a man by the name of Polly. Mm-hmm. What he did was he turned them into part of the Anglo-Saxon aristocracy. He made them into thanes. He endowed them with land. He made them into local royal officers. He settled these Danish mercenaries within England, and they were going to defend England. It's a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't work.
Yeah.
Didn't work at all. When Svein had taken care of work at home and had returned with another fleet in 1001, these Danish mercenaries, instead of defending England, figured it was more profitable to join up with the new invaders, and they did. Again, Æthelred was able to pay the invaders to go away, and having paid the invaders to go away, he decided that he was going to take care of the problem of untrustworthy mercenaries, and that is called St. Brice's Day Massacre. On St. Brice's Day, the 13th of November in 1002, Æthelred had issued an order throughout all of England to kill the Danes. Now, later writers, medieval writers, treated this as what we would call ethnic cleansing, as genocide. And they treated it as this horrendous action in which women and children were slaughtered indiscriminately. And that seems to be completely wrong. What it appears happened and what was ordered was the killing of the Danish mercenaries.
Yeah.
There's no evidence that any killing occurred in the Danelaw, where most of the Danes had settled. Nothing. And one would almost be willing to just simply say this is hyperbole and this didn't really happen, except that we have a charter
Right.
that confirms what happened. And this charter comes from Oxford. It's a charter issued by King Æthelred to St. Frithswerde Abbey in Oxford in 1004. And it records Æthelred's grant to the monks of a new privilege for the lands that they had to, for their lands to replace those charters, those title deeds that had been lost in a fire. And the fire had been set by the townspeople of Oxford during St. Brice's Day Massacre. This charter tells us what happens. And so this is the charter. To all dwelling in this country, it will be well known that since a decree was sent out by me with the counsel of my leading men and magnates, to the effect that all the Danes who sprung up like cockle or weed amongst the wheat, that's quoting scripture, Matthew 13:25, were to be destroyed by a most just extermination. And this decree was to be put into effect even as far as death. Those Danes who dwelt in the aforementioned town, Oxford, striving to escape death, entered the sanctuary of the church of St. Frithswerde, having broken by force the doors and bolts and resolved to make a refuge and defense for themselves therein against the people of the town and the suburbs. But when all the people in pursuit strove, forced by necessity to drive them out, and could not, they set fire to the planks and burnt, as it seems, the church with its ornaments and its books, its charters. Thus, we have to replace it.
Yeah.
Now, it's nice when archaeological evidence supports literary evidence. It happens too rarely. This time it happens.
Nice.
Because in 2008, some excavations that were being done at St. John's College, Oxford, turned up bones. These bones are dated to the same period as St. Brice's Day Massacre. An analysis of the bones shows that they were Scandinavians, and they were, all of them, male, and with the exception of only one, they were from their late teens to basically late 30s. And some of the bones were burnt.
Mm-hmm.
Put it together, what it looks like we have are the bones of some of those Danes who had died in that fire.
That's interesting.
And what really is important about that is no women.
Yeah.
No children. Even the child, it was a teenager.
Yeah.
So it wasn't ethnic cleansing. What's also interesting about it is that very few rulers in Western Europe, in Christendom, would have had the ability to be able to put out an edict to exterminate a bunch of Danes and actually have it carried out. It shows the ability of the king to be able to convey an order and have the order obeyed. It also shows you that the local inhabitants of Oxford had no love whatsoever for these Danish mercenaries.
Right.
The fact that they were willing to burn down the church. Now, I want to be clear about that. Burning down a church is not a good thing.
No.
And the violation of church sanctuary, because most of these Danes probably were Christian.
Yeah.
And the reason they took refuge in the church was because they could claim church sanctuary. It's clear that Archbishop Wulfstan, looking back upon this, really was upset by it
Yeah.
because he legislated for Æthelred, and the legislation that he subsequently gave in the name of Æthelred makes the violation of church sanctuary into a major crime.
Right.
The very fact that this charter quotes scripture is an indication of how uncomfortable Æthelred and his advisors were with the burning of a church and the violation of sanctuary. And the interesting thing is the scripture that they do quote, the part that they don't quote that comes afterwards, is what God tells us we are supposed to do with these capitals, which is to exterminate them by burning them.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, you're right.